Hello and welcome to the Educational Resource Center's test preparation video. Time management, memory and learning, and a clip from the Gottlieb workshop are all available on our website. You can also find these videos on B-Universe. Let's begin with a few questions that you should ask yourself, not only when you're preparing for your tests, but during the first week of the semester. Do I review my notes immediately after class or before the end of the day? Do I visit office hours with questions from the lecture? Am I mentally present every day in class with adequate food and sleep? Test preparation begins on day 1 of the semester. Let's call a spade a spade. Class is organized study time. Consistency is your key to success. You're likely to do better on tests when you've had consistent 8 hours of sleep, breakfast before a long morning of back-to-back classes, and a constant review of the material you're learning every day. Now, let's dig a little deeper. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to think about yourself as a student. Knowing yourself will give you further insight into how you should prepare for tests. What kind of student were you in elementary, middle, and high school? What messages did you receive about the importance of school and your academic abilities from your friends, family, and teachers? Why did you choose to attend college at this time? And why Boston University? What kind of student are you now? What kind of learner are you? Some study techniques are more effective depending on how you learn best. For visual learners, finding patterns and listing ideas can be useful for making notes and planning essay answers. For auditory learners, recording the lecture or reading aloud can help you retain the material. In addition to being a student, how else would you describe yourself? A dancer, a runner, perhaps a musician? And how do those roles impact your job as a student? An easy way to study for your upcoming test is to use our 5-step RAPPER roadmap as a guide for studying smarter. RAPPER stands for Recall, Assess, Plan, Prepare, and Review. First, begin with recall. What do I need to know for the exam, and how do I find out? Use your review sheets, course syllabi, lecture notes, and review sessions. Second, assess. Where are my weak spots, and how do I find those? Reviewing midterms, quizzes, homework, labs, and professor comments from papers and tests can help you see where more effort is required. Office hour conversations and study group peer feedback can also be good places to assess your weak spots in the course material. Third, plan. How much time do I have to study, and which chapters need more attention? And how do I prioritize the material? There is a finite amount of time after all. To help with the plan portion of RAPPER, this study guide organizer can be helpful as you think about what you need to know for your upcoming exam. You can input the most important concepts from a chapter, lecture, or from the entire test. As I said, there's a finite amount of time for studying. Taking the important concepts from the study guide organizer, look at your schedule and think about how many concepts you have to prepare and review between now and your test, avoiding studying the day of the test. The stress level that comes with preparing and reviewing 20 chapters in 5 days with a test on day 6 is going to look a lot different than preparing and reviewing 20 chapters in 10 days with the test on day 11. The 4th and 5th components of RAPPER involve preparing and reviewing your material. Preparing involves gathering materials and creating study guides, which can include flashcards, study sheets, and self-tests. Reviewing material can include reciting facts aloud, drawing concept maps, and studying with a group. Reviewing helps you see what specifically needs attention, extra attention for that matter. Looking at some general tips leading up to the test, let's ask students what they recommend.
The day before a test, I like to take a break from studying to walk outside. I also make sure to go to bed early.
Sit down and write yourself some sort of outline of all the material you need to know about a week before the test. It will help you to see how all the information you have been given fits together, and it will show you the areas you know the least about and therefore need to spend the most time studying.
The night before a test, try to get as good of a night's sleep as you can. Don't cram and cram and cram and then get 4 hours of sleep and then go into a test unfocused and unable to think. It's not worth it.
So we heard some tips about preparing for a test. Let's ask those students for some tips on what to do during the test.
During a test, I usually like to think about something I had watched the day before, or a comedy I might have watched because it's funny and it'll take my mind off the test for a second, and then I'll go back into it with a fresh mentality.
On the day of the test, get to the classroom 5 minutes early, put all your study materials away, and take some deep breaths to relax. Getting caught up in the last-minute review will make you way more anxious than you need to be and cause you to second-guess yourself during the exam.
When I sit down to take a test, I like to take a few deep breaths to relax and reassure myself that I will do well.
What do you do after your test to de-stress?
After a test, I love to go skateboarding to clear my mind and decompress.
After the test, don't worry about your answers or go to look things up in your class notes. It's too late to correct your answers now, and even if you were wrong, you still might get some partial credit. No use spending all your time between now and when the grades come back panicking about the things you did or didn't do wrong.
Usually after a test, I've been running on adrenaline for 3 days or more, so I go home, take a nap, and watch lots of TV, and it feels awesome.
After a test is over, I usually just like to listen to music because it'll take my mind off the test, because I know the test itself usually resonates in your mind for a while.
I leave you with this. Consider a student who has actively taken notes on almost every lecture, but has not recited, rewritten, or reviewed his or her notes. According to the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, you could forget as much as 40% of the material 19 minutes after the lecture has ended if you don't review your notes immediately afterwards. Reviewing your notes every day after every class will increase the likelihood that you will retain and recall the lecture material. Test taking is a skill that requires practice. Consistent studying all semester long will always yield far better results and will save you stress, sleep deprivation, and time. Good luck, and come see us anytime to strategize some more, and thanks for watching.